Marcus Thane thought his days of galactic surprises were over. A decorated soldier with years of experience on the front lines between the Earth-based Galactic Union and the hostile Drakari Confederation, Marcus had seen nearly everything the galaxy could throw at him. Hostile invasions, mysterious alien technologies, and the cold silence of space. Yet, none of that prepared him for the strange summons that came his way on a quiet, uneventful day. He'd been spending his post-war life in the outer rings, trying to enjoy a slower, quieter existence. But when a cryptic message arrived from the Galactic Executor's office, marked with the highest priority, his curiosity got the best of him. The message was formal and cold, explaining that he was the sole inheritor of Zarlek Narsax's will. Zarlek had been an eccentric Drakari mobile he'd once saved during a particularly vicious skirmish on the planet Tenebros, a dark, volcanic world near the Drakari Union border. Their encounter had been brief and unexpected. Marcus, leading a reconnaissance mission, had stumbled upon Zarlek's besieged transport ship and defended it from a sudden Drakari rebel attack. Grateful, Zarlek had promised that one day he would repay Marcus, but the soldier had shrugged it off, assuming he'd never see the strange Drakari again. Years passed, the war ended, and Marcus almost forgot about the encounter. As he traveled to the executor's office, Marcus's mind raced. What could a Drakari tycoon possibly leave him? Wealth, perhaps, or some rare alien artifact? His musings were cut short as he entered the towering executor's hall, a sleek, minimalist structure where inheritance matters of all kinds were settled for the galaxy's wealthy and powerful. The executor, a cold-eyed, gray-skinned android designed specifically for the bureaucratic labyrinth of galactic wills, greeted him with precise politeness. Marcus Thane, the executor intoned, as per the last testament of Zarlek Narsax, you are here to receive a unique bequest. Let's hear it, then, Marcus said, his curiosity now mingled with a touch of impatience. The executor tapped a control on his desk, and a translucent screen appeared before Marcus. It displayed a document stamped with numerous seals and signatures in the flowing Drakari script. The words that appeared in Galactic Standard Translation made Marcus's heart skip a beat. Inheritance item number 1, Lyra. Inheritance item number 2, Sarah. Solarian companions, bound as part of the life debt owed to Marcus Thane. Wait, what? Marcus blurted, caught off guard. You're saying I inherited 2 people? The executor's expression didn't change. To be precise, they are classified as companions. The late Zarlek's will states that they are bound to you as part of his life debt, a concept respected by Drakari law. Their companionship is a formal commitment, recognized by multiple intergalactic jurisdictions. The shock of the words hit him hard. Companions. He'd heard of such arrangements in alien societies, but it was unheard of among humans. Human ethics had long moved past the concept of ownership over others. He shifted uncomfortably, still processing the absurdity of it all. And they agreed to this? As Solarians, their societal bonds are intricately tied to psychic commitments. They accepted this arrangement with Zarlek and are legally bound to abide by his will. You may release them, but be warned that such an act could lead to political ramifications with the Drakari. Additionally, their attachment to you may go deeper than mere duty. As if on cue, the doors slid open, and 2 figures stepped into the room. The first was Lyra, a tall and serene-looking woman with skin that shimmered a deep emerald green, and eyes that held a quiet intelligence. She wore flowing robes that emphasized her graceful movements, her expression calm but attentive. Her dark hair was streaked with faint silver, framing her face with an ethereal glow. She walked with an elegance that commanded respect, bowing slightly as she approached. The second was Sarah, younger and more vibrant, with a mischievous glint in her sharp, violet eyes. Her appearance was strikingly similar to Lyra's, but she held herself with a looser posture, exuding a kind of defiant confidence. She wore a shorter, more modern outfit, her dark green hair pulled back in a ponytail. Sarah looked him over with a raised eyebrow, an almost amused smirk forming at the corner of her mouth. Both women regarded him in silence for a moment, each with a distinctly different energy. He felt their gaze as though they were reading him, assessing him, peeling back layers of his mind with some silent, psychic intuition. "I'm Marcus Thane," he managed, not sure what else to say. Lyra inclined her head gracefully. "It's an honor to meet you, Marcus." "I am Lyra. Zarlik spoke highly of you." Sarah rolled her eyes but extended her hand in a friendly, if slightly cheeky, gesture. "Sarah. And let me guess you have no idea what to do with us." Marcus laughed despite himself. "You'd be right about that." The executor, unperturbed by their exchange, continued, "It is customary for Solarian companions to accompany their new companion to their residence and provide assistance as needed. In your case, they come with specific skills that may be of value." "Oh, really?" Marcus replied, still wrapping his head around the bizarre situation. "And what kind of skills might those be?" Lyra answered smoothly. "Solarians are gifted in the psychic arts. We can read surface thoughts, influence perceptions, and, when necessary, provide tactical insights." Marcus felt a shiver of both intrigue and discomfort. He was a private man, used to holding his own thoughts close. But now, with two psychic aliens essentially bound to him by a galactic will, his life had just taken a sudden, irrevocable turn. He turned back to the executor, who was already tapping controls to finalize the arrangements. "And there's no other option? No way out of this?" The executor's mechanical voice held an almost sardonic lilt as he replied, "The will is final. Zarlik's life debt is now transferred to you. The bond is sealed." With that, the executor gave a formal bow, signaling the end of their session. Marcus glanced at the two Solarians, trying to hide the bewilderment still dancing across his face. "Well," he said, rubbing the back of his neck, "I guess I'll show you both to my place." Lyra nodded with serene acceptance, and Sarah shot him a challenging grin. "Lead the way, soldier." As they exited the executor's hall, Marcus had the unsettling feeling that his quiet days were over. He thought the war was behind him, but now, with two alien companions bound to him by the whims of a galactic will, it felt like his next adventure was just beginning and he had no idea where it might lead. The next morning, Marcus woke up to the sound of soft humming. It was both melodic and otherworldly, like a song from the stars themselves. For a moment, he forgot where he was, lost in the serenity of the tune. But then reality set in. He was no longer alone. Two Solarian women, Lyra and Sarah, were now part of his life, a life that had become a confusing mix of duty, mystery, and obligation, thanks to the late Zarlik Narsax. As he walked into the main room of his quarters, he saw Lyra by the window, her eyes closed as she meditated, seemingly at peace with her new surroundings. Sarah, however, was not nearly as serene. She was lounging on the couch, looking bored and fiddling with a small, metallic device she'd apparently brought with her from Zarlik's estate. "Good morning," Marcus said, attempting a casual tone. Lyra opened her eyes and offered him a soft smile. "Good morning, Marcus." Sarah barely glanced up. "You're still processing this whole inheritance thing, aren't you?" she asked, her tone more amused than empathetic. "You could say that," he replied, rubbing the back of his neck. "I'm still not sure how I feel about this situation. I don't think of myself as someone who should be inheriting people." Sarah laughed. "Oh, don't worry. We're not exactly people by human standards, are we? We're aliens, mysterious, unknowable creatures of the cosmos." She wiggled her fingers in mock mysticism before rolling her eyes. "Relax, Marcus. It's not like we're prisoners." Lyra, however, stepped forward, her expression thoughtful. "I understand your discomfort, Marcus. In Solarian culture, companionship bonds are sacred. We serve not out of obligation, but as an honor, as a form of deep, mutual respect. Zarlik's decision to bind us to you was not made lightly. But if this arrangement troubles you, we can discuss alternatives. He sighed. That's the thing. I don't know what I want, but I also don't want either of you feeling like you're bound to meet against your will. Sarah shrugged. Look, you want us gone, say the word. I could do with a bit of freedom myself. Her tone was nonchalant, but there was an edge to it, something guarded. But if I release you, what happens to you both? He asked, genuinely concerned. Lyra exchanged a look with Sarah, a silent conversation passing between them. Lyra finally answered, without a binding agreement, we would be vulnerable. The Solarian race is highly coveted, our psychic abilities sought after by those with darker intentions. Zarlik's protection shielded us, but without it or you we would likely become targets. Marcus frowned. The more he learned, the more he realized this was more complicated than he thought. So if I let you go, you're in danger. But if you stay, you're technically bound to me. Sarah scoffed. Oh, quit with the martyr complex. It's not as dramatic as that. We're Solarians, we're used to handling ourselves. But, yeah, having someone to keep the sharks at bay wouldn't hurt. He took a deep breath. All right, then. If staying with me keeps you safe, then you can stay as long as you want. But that doesn't mean I'm comfortable with this whole ownership thing. Let's think of it more as a partnership. Lyra nodded approvingly. A partnership is a noble choice, Marcus. Thank you. Just as they began to settle into a slightly more relaxed conversation, Sarah straightened, her playful demeanor vanishing. We're being watched, she said, her tone tense. Marcus immediately went on high alert. What do you mean? Lyra closed her eyes briefly, focusing. Someone has been watching us since last night, keeping their distance. Their thoughts are guarded, but hostile. A cold chill ran down Marcus's spine. This wasn't just a domestic complication, it was beginning to feel more like a trap. He thought back to Zarlik and how mysterious his life had been. Could it be that Zarlik's inheritance was more than just these two companions? Any idea who they are? Marcus asked, scanning the room as if he might catch sight of their unseen observer. Sarah shrugged. Probably someone from the Shadow Collective. Zarlik dealt with all sorts of shady organizations. They're likely after what he left behind us. Marcus glanced between them, his mind racing. Zarlik must have known that leaving you both to me would attract attention. What aren't you telling me? Lyra hesitated, her expression apologetic. There are things we didn't tell you because we wanted you to make your decision freely. But yes, Zarlik entrusted us with more than companionship. We carry encrypted information and our mind's important data he safeguarded with a psychic lock. The only way to access it is through a ritual called the Soul Unbinding, which requires your presence as our new companion. Marcus felt like the room had just tilted sideways. So you're saying you both have information in your minds that people would kill for? Sarah smirked. Got it in one, soldier. Zarlik didn't leave us with just anyone, he left us with someone he thought could protect us and the knowledge we carry. Lucky you. He was silent for a moment, absorbing the weight of it all. This wasn't just about protecting Lyra and Sarah from mysterious attackers, this was about guarding secrets that could potentially disrupt the galaxy's balance of power. As an ex-soldier, he'd known the stakes of galactic secrets all too well. Lives were lost, alliances shattered, and worlds threatened over information like this. What kind of information are we talking about? He asked. Lyra and Sarah shared another look, a mixture of concern and resignation. It's better if you don't know yet, Lyra replied. The Soul Unbinding will reveal everything, but until then, you're safer without that knowledge. Marcus clenched his fists, the familiar surge of frustration from his military days returning. He hated being left in the dark, especially with lives on the line. Fine, he said, trying to keep his cool. But if someone's watching us, we need to be ready for an attack. We can't stay here. Sarah's face lit up with excitement. Finally! Some action. I was starting to think you were all talk, soldier. Marcus shot her a glare. I've got a safe house a few clicks from here. Minimal technology, no direct connections to my military records. We can lay low there until we figure out our next move. Lyra nodded in agreement. That sounds wise. We can prepare for the soul unbinding in a secure environment, and if anyone tries to find us, we'll be ready. As they packed a few essentials, Marcus's mind spun with questions. Who was after them, exactly? What did Zarlik leave behind that was worth risking lives? And perhaps most disturbingly, what would happen when they finally unlocked the knowledge hidden within Lyra and Sarah's minds? For now, though, he pushed those thoughts aside. They had to focus on survival. As they slipped out of his quarters and into the night, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that his life had taken a turn from which there was no going back. As they traveled under the cover of darkness, the trio moved silently through the twisting alleyways of the city. Lyra and Sarah glided beside him, barely making a sound. It was as if they could read his movements, anticipating his every step, seamlessly adjusting to his pace. He wondered if it was part of their psychic abilities and unconscious synchronization that came naturally to Solarians. When they finally reached the safe house, a small, nondescript building hidden behind a tangle of machinery and spare parts, Marcus keyed in the code. The door slid open, revealing a cramped but secure space stocked with supplies, weapons, and basic amenities. Sarah immediately inspected the weapons, a gleam of approval in her eyes. Not bad, soldier. Didn't take you for the type to keep such a stash. Marcus chuckled, trying to lighten the mood. Old habits die hard. Lyra, meanwhile, took a seat by the small window, her gaze fixed on the horizon. We should begin the soul unbinding ritual as soon as possible. The information within us could provide valuable insight into who is hunting us and why. Marcus nodded, still processing the surreal chain of events that had brought them here. He felt responsible for these two women, thrust into his life by a will he hadn't asked for. But now, they were more than just an inheritance. They were allies, companions, maybe even friends. As he looked at Lyra and Sarah, Marcus felt a strange surge of determination. No matter what secrets they held, he'd see this through. Whatever came their way, they would face it together. The galaxy was full of shadows, but with Lyra and Sarah by his side, he felt ready to confront them whatever they might be. Days passed in the hidden confines of Marcus's safe house, each day blending into the next as they waited, watched, and prepared for whatever might come their way. Despite the tension, he found himself adapting to the presence of Lyra and Sarah. They were an unusual pair, with Lyra's calm, almost meditative nature balancing out Sarah's fiery unpredictability. Marcus hadn't realized just how much he missed the camaraderie of his military days until he began to find comfort in their company. Yet, a shadow continued to loom over them. Whoever was watching them hadn't made a move yet, but Marcus could feel the weight of it pressing down. The need to learn the secrets Lyra and Sarah held grew stronger by the day. If he was going to protect them and himself, they had to find out what Zarlik had hidden within their minds. One night, as the three of them sat around a dimly lit table, Lyra turned to Marcus with a solemn expression. "It's time, Marcus," she said softly. "We should begin the soul unbinding. We can't remain in hiding forever, and the knowledge we hold may help us understand who our enemies are." Marcus took a deep breath, feeling the gravity of the moment. "What exactly is this ritual? You've only given me pieces so far." Lyra glanced at Sarah, who nodded, a rare seriousness in her eyes. Lyra began, "The soul unbinding is a deeply rooted Solarian ritual that allows us to unlock memories and information hidden behind psychic locks. Zarlik embedded the secrets within us in such a way that they can only be accessed by someone we share a binding connection with, in this case, you." Marcus frowned. "So, I'm supposed to just sit there while you unlock these memories?" Sarah shook her head, smiling wryly. If it were that simple, we would have done it already. The ritual will require a mental connection, a merging of our thoughts, memories, and emotions. You'll experience parts of our minds, and we'll experience parts of yours. It's intimate. The word lingered in the air, and Marcus shifted uncomfortably. Intimate how? Lyra's gaze was steady. It's difficult to explain to a non-psychic. But in the Solarian tradition, it's considered a form of trust-sharing one's inner world with another. There are no secrets, no barriers. Everything is laid bare, and it's permanent. Once we begin, there's no turning back. Marcus swallowed, feeling the weight of the decision. He'd spent so long guarding his thoughts, his memories, his pain from the war. To open himself up to two people, even if they were his allies, felt like surrendering a part of himself he'd fought hard to protect. But as he looked at Lyra and Sarah, he knew there was no other choice. Their safety, and his own, depended on it. "All right," he said quietly. "Let's do it." They set up in the safe house's small main room, lighting candles around them in a circle to create a sense of focus. Lyra and Sarah sat across from Marcus, each extending a hand toward him. He took their hands, their skin cool and smooth, with an almost electric hum that pulsed beneath the surface. As he closed his eyes, he felt a strange, soothing energy wash over him, blending with his own thoughts and emotions. Lyra's voice was soft, almost a whisper. "Clear your mind, Marcus. Let go of your worries, your fears. Allow the connection to form." Slowly, Marcus felt himself sinking into a deep, trance-like state. His thoughts began to drift, and a strange sensation of weightlessness took over. He could feel their presence, not physically, but mentally, like shadows dancing at the edges of his mind, slipping in and out of focus. Then, suddenly, he was no longer in the safe house. His surroundings had transformed into a surreal landscape of memories, fragments of images, sounds, and emotions swirling around him like a vast ocean. He could see flashes of his own life, the battles, the losses, the quiet moments he'd shared with comrades, the faces of friends who were no longer with him. But as he moved deeper, he began to see memories that weren't his. He found himself in a lush, green forest, the air thick with a sweet, floral scent. He saw Lyra as a child, her emerald skin glowing in the sunlight as she laughed, playing with other Solarian children. He felt her joy, her innocence. But then, the scene shifted. He saw her older, in Zarlik's service, her serene expression hiding a quiet sadness as she accepted her duty as his companion. He moved further, catching glimpses of Sarah's life. Her memories were sharper, more chaotic. He felt her rebellious spirit, her desire for freedom, the countless times she tried to escape the confines of her bond with Zarlik. Yet, somewhere along the way, she'd come to accept her role, even if grudgingly, learning to see it as a means of survival. As their memories faded, a new vision took shape. He found himself in a dark, metallic room, the air thick with tension. Zarlik stood before Lyra and Sarah, his alien features drawn with worry as he spoke to them in low, hurried tones. "I don't have much time," he said, his voice echoing through their minds. "The Shadow Collective will come for me, and I can't protect you once I'm gone. I'm embedding crucial information within your mind's data that could bring down the entire collective. This is my final safeguard. Once I'm gone, find Marcus Thane. He's the only one I trust." Zarlik's face flickered, shifting between fear and resolve. "Marcus will keep you safe. And when the time is right, he'll know what to do with the information." The scene dissolved, leaving Marcus with a burning sensation in his chest. Zarlik had risked everything, hiding data that could disrupt the galaxy's criminal underworld inside the minds of his two trusted companions. And now, that data was within Marcus as well. But before he could process it fully, he felt a violent tug. The shadows in his mind darkened, shifting into a sense of malevolence, a sinister presence invading the connection. A voice filled his head, cold and calculating. "We know who you are, Marcus Thane," it sneered. "We know what you carry. Marcus felt a surge of panic, recognizing the voice. It was the Shadow Collective. Somehow, they tapped into the psychic ritual, using the mental connection as a bridge into their minds. Lyra's voice cut through his fear, steady and fierce. "Fight them, Marcus. Don't let them in." He focused, pushing back against the invasive presence with all his strength. He could feel Sarah's energy surging alongside his, her fiery determination adding to his own. Together, they forced the intruder out, the presence fading like smoke dispersing into the wind. When he opened his eyes, they were back in the safe house, breathing heavily. The candles had burned low, casting long, flickering shadows around them. "We have to leave," Lyra said urgently. "They know where we are. They won't stop until they have what's in our minds." Marcus nodded, his body still tingling from the intensity of the connection. "But we have the data now. We know what Zarlek was hiding." Sarah clenched her fists. "Then let's make sure the Shadow Collective regrets ever coming after us." They packed quickly, taking only what they needed. The information they'd unlocked was powerful, almost unimaginable in its scope. Zarlek had gathered years' worth of intelligence on the Shadow Collective's operations, alliances, and hidden assets. It was a roadmap to dismantling the collective, piece by piece, a weapon that could potentially topple one of the galaxy's most dangerous organizations. As they left the safe house, Marcus felt a renewed sense of purpose. This was no longer just about survival, it was a mission, one that carried the weight of Zarlek's trust and the lives of countless others who suffered under the Shadow Collective's rule. They slipped into the city's underbelly, blending into the crowds as they made their way toward the nearest transport terminal. Lyra and Sarah walked beside him, their expressions hardened, their eyes scanning the shadows for any sign of danger. But as they approached the terminal, a group of figures emerged from the darkness, blocking their path. They were armored in sleek, dark suits, their faces obscured by masks, and their weapons trained on the trio. The leader stepped forward, his voice a low growl. "Marcus Thane. Lyra and Sarah. You've caused us quite a bit of trouble. Hand over the data, and we'll let you live." Marcus raised his weapon, his stance unwavering. "Come and get it." In an instant, the street erupted into chaos. Blaster fire echoed through the narrow alleyways as Marcus, Lyra, and Sarah fought side by side, their movements perfectly synchronized, a testament to the bond they'd forged through the ritual. With Lyra's psychic precision, Sarah's fierce agility, and Marcus's tactical expertise, they tore through the mercenaries with a skill and ferocity that took their enemies by surprise. One by one, the mercenaries fell, until only their leader remained. He stumbled back, his mask cracked, revealing a pair of cold, calculating eyes filled with fury and fear. "This isn't over," he snarled, disappearing into the shadows. As silence settled over the alley, Marcus turned to Lyra and Sarah, his heart pounding. "They'll keep coming. But now, we know how to fight back." Lyra nodded, a fire in her eyes. "We have Zarlek's information. We can dismantle the Shadow Collective, expose their secrets." Sarah grinned, her eyes alight with excitement. "Then let's tear them apart." Marcus smiled, feeling the weight of the mission settling over him. The galaxy was a vast, dangerous place, filled with shadows and secrets. But with Lyra and Sarah by his side, he was ready to face whatever lay ahead. Together, they would bring the Shadow Collective to its knees no matter what it took. The escape from the safe house had been a close call, but Marcus, Lyra, and Sarah managed to evade the Shadow Collective's forces long enough to reach the outskirts of the city. They moved swiftly through the maze of tunnels and abandoned passages beneath the sprawling metropolis, using every trick Marcus had learned in his years as a soldier, every psychic intuition Lyra possessed, and every ounce of Sarah's cunning to stay ahead of their pursuers. They found temporary refuge in a hidden underground shelter, an old, forgotten station used by smugglers and rebels. The walls were scarred with graffiti, remnants of long-past skirmishes, and the faint hum of machinery echoed in the still air. As they settled in, Marcus pulled up a map of their sector, displaying the locations they'd uncovered in Zarlik's embedded memories. Each marked location represented a key asset of the Shadow Collective safehouses, intelligence hubs, arms depots. With this information, they had the potential to cripple the Syndicate's operations piece by piece. "We can't do this alone," Marcus said, breaking the silence. "The Shadow Collective is too big, too well connected. Even with everything Zarlik left us, it's only a matter of time before they hunt us down." Lyra nodded thoughtfully. "You're right. But there are those in the galaxy who would stand against them if given the chance." Sarah leaned back, crossing her arms with a smirk. "You mean the Union's Special Operations Forces, don't you? Last I checked, they're not exactly in the business of helping ex-soldiers on rogue missions." Marcus hesitated. He knew she was right. The Galactic Union was cautious, bound by bureaucratic rules and tangled alliances. But he also knew a handful of people who might be willing to look past those restrictions. Friends he'd served with, allies who'd fought alongside him in the darkest moments of the war. "We don't need the whole Union," Marcus replied, determination hardening in his voice. "I know a few people. People who owe me favors, and people who want the Collective gone just as much as we do." He pulled out a secure communication device he'd been saving for emergencies and keyed in a coded message. It was brief but urgent, directed to a few trusted contacts, veterans like him who'd grown disillusioned with the Union's red tape and were itching for a cause worth fighting for. Within hours, responses began to trickle in, each one a pledge of support. Marcus felt a weight lift from his shoulders. They weren't alone anymore. A few days later, they gathered in a remote asteroid field far from any major system, using one of Zarlik's encrypted communication beacons to coordinate their next move. Marcus's contacts had arrived in a patched-together convoy of small, agile ships, piloted by a ragtag crew of ex-soldiers, smugglers, and bounty hunters. These were people who'd been pushed to the edges of society, people with nothing to lose and everything to gain by taking down the Shadow Collective. As the ships docked, Marcus greeted each ally, introducing them to Lyra and Sarah. The Solarians' presence sparked curiosity, but no one asked too many questions. They were all here for a singular purpose, to dismantle the Shadow Collective. A familiar face stepped forward, a wiry man with sharp eyes and a perpetual scowl. This was Riker, an old friend of Marcus's from his days in the Special Operations Division. Riker nodded to Marcus, then gave Lyra and Sarah a curious glance. "Quite the entourage you've got, Thane. You've always had a knack for finding trouble." Marcus smirked. "You could say that. But this isn't just trouble, it's a chance to make a real difference. With Zarlik's data, we can hit the Collective where it hurts." Riker's scowl softened, a glint of excitement sparking in his eyes. "Then let's get started." They laid out the plan. Zarlik's data had identified 3 high-priority targets: a data processing hub on the frozen planet of Xylaris, a weapons cache on the asteroid moon Raven 7, and a communications relay station hidden in a nebula near the Drakari border. Each of these locations was critical to the Collective's operations, and taking them out would cripple their infrastructure, making it nearly impossible for them to coordinate their forces. The team divided into smaller squads, each with a specific objective. Marcus, Lyra, and Sarah would lead the assault on the data processing hub, where Zarlik had stored records detailing the Collective's alliances, deals, and secret trade routes. If they could access and extract that data, it would be a massive blow to the Syndicate. The journey to Xylaris was tense. Lyra and Sarah sat in the cockpit beside Marcus, their eyes focused on the icy planet looming ahead. Xylaris was a desolate, frigid world, its surface covered in glaciers and massive ice formations. The data processing hub was hidden within a massive glacier, shielded by energy fields and guarded by mercenaries. As they descended, Marcus tightened his grip on the controls, his mind flashing back to his days on the battlefield. He'd done countless covert missions, but this one felt different. He wasn't just fighting for a cause, he was fighting for the people beside him, for the promise of something more than the war-torn galaxy he'd left behind. Once they landed, the team moved with practiced efficiency. Marcus took point, his weapon drawn as they approached the hub's entrance. Lyra and Sarah followed, their senses heightened, scanning for any psychic signatures that might signal nearby guards. As they entered the facility, Sarah froze, her expression darkening. "There's a strong psychic field here. They're trying to scramble our minds, probably set up to ward off Solarian abilities." Marcus nodded. "Stay close. We'll cover each other." They pushed forward, navigating the cold, metallic corridors. Every corner held potential danger, every sound a possible threat. But together, they advanced, eliminating guards with precision and silent efficiency. They reached the central processing room, a vast space filled with rows of humming servers and data banks. In the center stood a control terminal, glowing softly. This was at the core of the Shadow Collective's secrets. As Lyra and Sarah moved to access the terminal, a cold, mocking voice echoed through the room. Well, the famous Marcus Thane and his little Solarian pets. Did you really think you could just walk in here?" A figure stepped out from the shadows, a tall, armored man with an aura of deadly calm. Marcus recognized him immediately, Varric, one of the Shadow Collective's top enforcers, infamous for his ruthless efficiency and unbreakable loyalty to the Syndicate. Varric smirked. "Zarlik's data dies here, Thane. And so do you." In an instant, Varric charged, moving with inhuman speed. Marcus barely managed to block the first strike, the impact reverberating through his arms. Varric was faster and stronger than any opponent he'd faced before, his movements precise and brutal. Lyra and Sarah joined the fray, their psychic abilities flaring as they attempted to disorient Varric, sending waves of mental energy to disrupt his focus. But he was prepared, wearing a device that shielded him from their influence. He laughed, his voice filled with contempt. "You think cheap tricks will save you?" The fight was intense, brutal, each second a test of survival. But as Marcus and the Solarians fought in unison, he felt their bond strengthening, a silent understanding flowing between them. They moved as one, anticipating each other's actions, each strike and dodge coordinated in a dance of survival. Finally, after a grueling battle, Marcus managed to land a powerful blow, knocking Varric off balance. Sarah seized the opportunity, using her psychic abilities to lift a heavy piece of machinery and hurl it at him, pinning him against the wall. With a final, determined effort, Lyra focused her energy, channeling a concentrated psychic blast that shattered Varric's shield and left him disoriented. Marcus stepped forward, his weapon trained on the enforcer. "It's over, Varric." But Varric only sneered, blood trickling down his face. "You think you've won? The Shadow Collective is everywhere. Kill me, and you'll only bring down more wrath upon yourselves." Marcus's gaze hardened. "We're not afraid of shadows." Without another word, he fired, ending Varric's life. The room fell silent, the weight of their victory settling over them. It wasn't over, not by a long shot, but they'd taken a crucial step. Lyra and Sarah returned to the control terminal, quickly extracting the data. The files were immense, containing details of the Shadow Collective's entire operation, names, locations, assets, and even some members of the Union who'd been working with the Collective in secret. This could change everything," Lyra whispered, her eyes wide with disbelief. Marcus nodded, a fierce determination burning within him. "With this data, we can dismantle the Collective from the inside. We can expose their allies, dismantle their networks, bring justice to those they've wronged." Sarah grinned, a spark of triumph in her eyes. "Then let's not waste time. The galaxy's about to learn who's really in charge." In the days that followed, Marcus and his newfound allies launched a series of coordinated strikes, using the data to dismantle the Shadow Collective's empire piece by piece. Lyra and Sarah became essential to the operation, their psychic abilities and intimate knowledge of Zarlek's data guiding every step of the plan. Word of their actions spread, inspiring others across the galaxy to stand up against the collective's influence. Small rebellions erupted in places once under the Syndicate's control, and old alliances crumbled as the collective's secrets were exposed for all to see. And through it all, Marcus, Lyra, and Sarah stood side by side, an unlikely team forged in the crucible of danger and trust. The bond they'd formed through the soul unbinding grew stronger with each victory, each shared risk, each narrow escape. As the Shadow Collective's empire crumbled, Marcus realized something he hadn't felt in years, a sense of purpose, a belief that he could make a difference in a galaxy that had long felt indifferent. When their mission was finally complete, when the last of the Collective's leaders had been brought to justice, Marcus stood with Lyra and Sarah at his side, watching as the galaxy began to rebuild, free from the Collective's shadow. And as they prepared to leave for the next adventure, he knew that whatever the future held, he wouldn't be facing it alone. Together, they had become more than companions, more than allies. They were a family bound by trust, loyalty, and a shared determination to carve their own path through the stars. The galaxy was vast and full of challenges, but with Lyra and Sarah by his side, Marcus was ready to face whatever came next.